We're talking about our top 5 cricketers of all time on this episode 39 of Kingsgrove Sports Centre Podcast. We would like to welcome everybody to this 39th episode of the Kingsgrove Sports Centre Podcast. We're coming to you from the comfort of our own homes, except for Hamish. In fact, we'll introduce him first. Hamish Solomons, everybody.
Hello. How are you?
Doing well, man. Where are you joining us from this evening?
I decided to go to work, to be truthful. It'd be the only place, even though my work is closed down, obviously for obvious reasons, it's the only place I could get some peace and quiet. It's a bit of a madhouse at my house with homeschooling and 3 wild children.
Well, it's good to see you. And then, of course, we've got our resident Englandite, I don't know, what Englishman? That's the word I'm looking for. Englishman, Mr. Charlie Carter. How you doing, Charlie?
You Aussies and you Americans, you just make up words left, right, from our language, don't you?
There's nothing more Australian than making up new words, except for Mr. Stuart Haley. How are you this evening, buddy?
I'm very well. How are you, Nick?
Yeah, good. It's good to see you. In fact, and then, of course, me normally in the corner. In fact, if I press this button, I'll show up in the corner. Here I am, your producer, Nick, and I'm hosting, sort of, this evening because here we are in the comfort of our own home. All of us still quarantining, doing the whole COVID-19 safety thing and trying to be safe and responsible. So this week on our social media, we put out a story post where we invited everybody to give us their favorite cricketer of all time, and the response was fantastic. We got so many responses from a lot of you guys about who your favorite cricketer was of all time. So I've asked these 3 guys. See, I didn't grow up with cricket, but these 3 guys did. Love the game.
Really?
Yeah, as surprising as that can be, growing up in Alabama, you don't play a lot of cricket. But these 3 guys grew up with the game, and so I've put it to them to give us their personal lists of their top 5 cricketers of all time. And so we're going to do that for you now in this episode of the Kingsgrove Sports Centre Podcast. And after they share their top 5 cricketers, we, of course, invite you to share with us your favorite cricketers of all time. If you agree with their lists or disagree with their lists, give us a list of your own. Leave your list of top 5 in our comments. You can do that anywhere you can find us on social media. So we're at facebook.com/Kingsgrove Sports Centre. We're on Instagram at Kingsgrove Sports. We're at Twitter at Kingsgrove Sport. Obviously, you can watch our podcast on YouTube if you're joining us here, or you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. And if you can't find us on your platform, the RSS feed to our podcast is in the YouTube description of every video we put out. So,
not forgetting, of course, that hashtag KSC podcast.
I just knew I was going to forget something.
Nice to have the roles reversed.
Yeah, isn't it? So these guys have got their top 5 cricketers of all time. Personally, for them, they each go through their own list. So we'd like to get started. Why don't we start with, let's see, whose list did I get first? I got Stuart's list first. Why don't we kick it off with Stu? Stu, who's your number 5 favorite cricketer of all time?
Well, we're going backwards. Number 5. So number 5, I had a very stylish batsman, a very stylish person all round. Basically, whatever he did on the cricket field, I went with Mark Waugh Jr., as he was known, because he's slightly younger than his brother Steve. Obviously, so when he debuted, I was probably about 10 years old. Scored 100 on debut at the Adelaide Oval. Looked magnificent doing it. He probably had a bit of a mullet at the time. Don't you reckon, Hamish? There's a bit of hair flying out the back of the helmet. But one of the most stylish batsmen of all time. One of the most stylish fielders as well. Whatever he did in the cricket field, he did with just a certain style and ease, you would say. And one of the best fielders, one of the best catchers ever, I reckon.
Mark Waugh.
Absolutely graceful and gifted.
Correct. Some people sort of think, he might have underachieved because he averaged about 41 or something, but he played some of the best innings that you'll ever see in your entire life.
The thing about Mark Waugh is when you talk to people about why they went to watch cricket at the SCG or whatnot, a lot of them, or so many of them, said they went to watch Mark Waugh, and that was at a time when the Australian cricket team was probably at its strongest that it's been in 30 years. And people just loved watching him. He made the game look easy. In the field, he was unbelievable. And he also wasn't a bad bowler. Started off his career as a handy medium pacer, and then came on and bowled those offies later on in his career. All-round package.
So what about you, Hamish? Where does that leave you? If Mark Waugh is number 5 for Stu, you're number 5.
Yeah, well, I would have definitely had Mark Waugh in my top 5, but one of the stipulations was we couldn't double up. So I went the other twin, but he's a little bit higher up on the list. My number 5's a bit of an unusual one. Courtney Walsh from the West Indies. One of the I guess the main reason why I really admired Courtney Walsh was sort of he emerged from the shadow of the West Indies of the 70s and the 80s, where they were probably the most formidable team going around, particularly from a fast bowling point of view. And he sort of came out of the shadows of those guys such as Andy Roberts, Michael Holding, Joel Garner and Malcolm Marshall. And as the West Indies began to sort of slide down the rankings, he just sort of went from strength to strength the older he got. And he just sort of eventually became this wicket-taking machine. And I really just loved following his progress to the point where, you know, when he retired, I think in 2001, he had become the greatest wicket-taker of all time at that point. And now he sits, I think, 20 years on, number 6 on the list, only behind Anderson, perhaps, and McGrath in the fast bowling ranks. So just one of them. And he also, as a fast bowler, was one of those blokes that captained his country for quite a number of years. And on the field, you could see he was very relaxed and at times comical. And I just sort of liked that about him.
Nice. What do you think?
He was also a tremendous lever of the ball, wasn't he, Hamish?
His batting record was probably what you would call a little indifferent. Most ducks at one stage, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
I think he must have had it with the ball.
Yeah. Yes.
Loved him. We also had him at
Kingsgrove. I faced him.
Yeah, we had him at Kingsgrove doing a fast bowling clinic at one stage. And I remember one of the young bowlers, probably about 12 or 13 of age at that stage, was a young Nathan Ellis, who this year has really made his mark on cricket. Sheffield Shield point of view, playing for Tasmania, was one of the best performed bowlers in the BBL, and one of our boys for King Sport.
Yeah, right. Yep. We probably need to keep moving. Who's Charlie got in at number 5?
Well, look, obviously, having grown up in the UK, it's going to be different for me. These guys have picked an Australian and a West Indian as their favourite. I've obviously gone for an Englishman. My choice for number 5 was Darren Gough. It was when I was first getting into cricket and I first chose to be a fast bowler. I put that in inverted commas to stop the insults. His action was the only one that I felt that I could do. I mean, around that time, England had seamers like Phil de Freitas, Dominic Cork, and Angie Caddick, and I couldn't really mimic their action at all. Darren Gough's, it seemed fairly easy to mimic. And what I like most about Darren Gough is that he always looked like he was having fun, having a bit of a laugh on the field. Also helped that he took a hat-trick at the Sydney Cricket Ground in, I think it was 99, the 99 Test match there, 98, 99 Ashes. And we touched on it in the last episode, his sort of sense of humour. Freddie Flintoff asking him why his nickname was Rhino and him saying, "I'm as strong as an ox." That just sort of irreverent attitude. Now, I might add a bit of comedy value just while we're talking about the whole England thing. Obviously, with the COVID-19 situation, Jess and I were supposed to be going over to the UK for my sister's wedding in a few months' time. And Qantas obviously cancelled our flights, and the Australian government decided to put in travel restrictions. And on the day that both of those things happened, My Australian passport arrived in the post. Thank you, government.
There you go. There you go.
Does that make you an Australian
Just being
now?
helpful, Charlie.
I am officially an Australian now. How scary is that?
We revoke that.
Yeah.
All right.
I got
Moving on to. Sorry, go ahead. What did you say?
Yeah, I've got to say, I love his choice out of English, out of many great Australian cricketers. Darren Gough was an absolute competitor and one of those, I'd say, a crowd favourite for the Australians because he was a bit like an Australian.
Well, while we got you there, Hamish, why don't you go right on to your number 4 pick?
My number 4, I've decided to, we're all big fans at Kingsgrove Sports of women's cricket. We supported a hell of a lot. So I went for, I had to really think hard about making a decision between Elise Perry and Alex Blackwell. Elise Perry, you know, her stats talk for themselves. She'll probably go down as one of the great Australian sports person or people of all time, having represented Australia in soccer, and she'll go down as one of the great cricketers of all time. But for me, Alex Blackwell, there's just something special there. I've seen her go about her business for many years before her retirement not long ago. Just an amazing work ethic and, you know, got to the point in her career where she captained Australia, and that in itself is a wonderful achievement. But she lost her captaincy to Meg Lanning, who's still the current Australian captain. A lot of people may have gone one way or the other with that. It seemed to inspire her to work even harder, and she just sort of continued to go from strength to strength and just became one of the greats of women's cricket. And I just really admired the way I was lucky enough to work with her in the nets a little bit, and she's probably one of the best and the hardest workers I've seen in the nets, and was even at the back end of her career open to advice. And her record, you know, speaks for itself. I think, you know, she played international cricket for Australia for something like 15 years. To be at the top of your game for 15 years, very admirable.
Yeah, totally. Couldn't agree more. And I mentioned in that post about favorite cricketers of all time, when people mention Alex Blackwell, I made a point to say, like, one of the nicest people I feel like I've ever met. And she totally is. What about you, Stu? Who'd you bring in at number 4?
At number 4, I had someone who is probably not. When I was growing up, I probably actually didn't like him that much because I used to just watch him take wickets against Australia for fun. But the older I've got and the more I've sort of learned a bit about him and obviously got more experience in the game, the more I've come to enjoy his work, and that's Malcolm Marshall, one of the great West Indian fast bowlers. Was just an outstanding cricket, an outstanding bowler. Not the tallest of bowlers. I think he only stood about 5'9", which is good. That's just a little bit taller than me. But just his fantastic fast bowler. Another wholehearted cricketer as well. There's a famous incident of him playing against England when he was obviously terrorising them, taking wickets, and they thought they got away from him because he broke his thumb in the first innings, and they thought, that's it, he's gone for the series. We'll be okay. He ended up coming out and batted one-handed and scored runs. Batting one-handed, so just an absolute fantastic fast bowler, obviously part of those fantastic West Indies teams. Unfortunately, he when he retired, he went on to coach the West Indies for a little bit. Sadly, as we know, he unfortunately passed away much too soon of colon cancer, I believe, which is obviously a shame. But he is one of the best fast bowlers of all time.
What about the story of Malcolm Marshall when he cleaned up Mike Gadding?
Oh yes,
and I reckon it got him right in the nose.
Got Gatt straight. Yeah, you can find a picture on if it's a bit gruesome. But there is a picture on the internet. Yeah, got Mike Gadding straight between the eyes. And there's a picture of Mike Gaddy with a big cut across his nose and two big black eyes, and we obviously had to retire hurt. But yeah, there is a story that they were picking bits of bone out of the ball before they used it again.
Around about 2011, 2012, at my home cricket club, Bovey Tracy, Mike Gatting actually came and opened our nets. And I introduced him by saying, well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been told not to mention Malcolm Marshall, Shane Warne, or Shakur Rana. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Gatting.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, we're going to go to yours. Hamish, I might ask you, if you can, while Charlie's giving us his number 4, maybe turn the volume down on your phone a little bit. I got a little feedback coming from your side. But in the meantime, Charlie, if you want to toss us your 4th pick.
Well, I actually had a joint pick at number 4. I had 2 cricketers, one Australian, one Englishman/South African. I went for Brett Lee and Kevin Peterson. Kevin Peterson, I love the way he batted. I love the way he took the game to the opposition, and that was great to see someone in an England shirt doing that. Probably the first, really effective person to do that when I grew up and was watching cricket, and that was sort of my late teens, early 20s that he was doing that. And Brett Lee, I don't know, there's just something about him. I love the fact that he just ran in, he was quick, he was intimidating, but at the end of it all, he was still a really nice bloke. The sportsmanship, between him and the England players in 2005, I don't know, I've just always had, good feelings about Brett Lee. I like the way he bowls. I like the way he's got some ticker about him as well, the way he batted in that series. And to see him firsthand at the Gabba in 2006, and see Adam Gilchrist standing behind the stumps. I'm not sure if he was still in the stadium or if he was in Cairns. He was that far back. It was the speed that Brett Lee was bowling was fantastic. So Brett Lee and Kevin Peterson. And when they went head-to-head at the Oval in 2005, that's among one of the greatest passages of Test cricket that I've ever seen.
Yeah, okay, coming back to Hamish, what do you got in at number 3, Hamish?
Okay, well, like I said, when Stuart picked Mark Wall, he stole my thunder a little bit. So I went Steve Waugh because, basically I loved Steve as much as I loved Mark. And obviously there's a lot of history with the, I guess you'd say the Solomons family and the Waugh family in regards to sponsoring them as young fellas. And Harry certainly did a lot to help them through in their younger days, all the way through to making the Australian teams. Steve Waugh, I mean, look, just the mere fact that you had these 2 amazing cricketers come from basically the one birth is amazing. And similarly with the Blackwells, because Alex Blackwell was a twin and Kate, her twin sister, played for Australia as well. So both sort of freaks of nature type of situation there where you get out of the whole population of Australia, a set of twins representing their country. And Steve and Mark Waugh, they were really so different for twins. I guess you could say that it was Steve's character and mental strength that made him such a great cricketer, whereas Mark was very naturally gifted and very laid back. And you just think if you combine those attributes, you probably would have had a player such as Don Bradman, the perfect package, if you know what I mean. But, as twins, we got so many wonderful things from Steve Waugh, such a long career. I think his career spanned 18 years. And the Australian public just loved his tenacity and his toughness on the field. And, it was an era of Australian cricket that was just amazing. So many wonderful cricketers, so well led by Steve Waugh. I just think to myself, what if they maybe had been conjoined twins, where they shared just, one arm each and one leg each? Would they still have been good enough to play for Australia? And you can imagine the 2 heads clashing. Steve saying to Mark, come on, Haydos has just got out, we better go pad up. And Mark saying, what's your hurry, mate? Let's watch the 5th race at Rose Hill.
I've got money on number 7 at Rose Hill. We can't go yet. Yeah,
exactly. But between the 2 of them, just absolute amazing era for Australian cricket. I really loved both of them. Steve Waugh, what a legend.
We'll go to Stu. Stu, you've got a quite a legend for your number 3. Makes me wonder who your top 2 are going to be. So why don't you share your number 3 with us?
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah.
So number 3, again, I've gone with a guy that I probably hated watching as a kid because he was so good and they beat Australia all the time. But I've gone with the great man, the original Master Blaster, the one and only. There's only one Master Blaster. A couple of blokes have tried to take that mantle, but there's only one, and that is Vivian Richards. He is coolness personified, and if you sort of compare him to the modern guys and attacking batsmen, you've got guys like David Warner and Coley and Chris Gale and Glenn Maxwell. For them, was an unbelievable cricketer. Was in a great side that the West Indies was. He was the number 1. There's no cooler bloke on the cricket field. I don't think there's ever been a cooler bloke on the cricket field, to be fair, Viv Richards. And he could back up whatever anybody said. Whatever he wanted to say. He didn't say a lot. He let his bat do the talking. Always batted in a cap. So he's facing Lillian Thompson, the quickest blokes going around, and he always batted in a cap. He said, "Mate, you can bowl as fast as you like, but I'm going to take you blokes on." And he'd be hooking them off his nose. Never took a backward step. Just his body language. He had this. Remember the Hamish? Remember his walk when he'd be walking out to the.
It wasn't a walk.
Crease.
It was a strut.
He just he had this saunter. It was a strut. He just basically said, "Mate, this is my domain. You're just here to you're just filling in." Always used to he's chewing on his chewing gum. No better than the great Vivian Richards, and again a nice guy. He came. I think he did the circuit. Yeah. I mean, we had him in the shop at Kingsgrove. Obviously, Harry's had an association with him, and he was a great fella. No arrogance about him. Just a real mate. He was a cool cat.
Let's take it back over to Charlie Carter and see who's Charlie's got in for his number 3 on our list here.
Well, this one might be a bit of a surprise because anyone who knows me and how I play the game of cricket knows that this is quite possibly the polar opposite. My number 3 was Michael Atherton, England captain during the 90s at a time when English cricket was even worse than it is now. So it basically... When I first started getting into cricket, Michael Atherton was the captain. Australians have always talked about when they're targeting an opposition, targeting the captain. For me, growing up, it was always you admire the captain of your team. And I'm sure that's the same for Australians as well. The Australian cricket captain, second only to the Prime Minister. But with Michael Atherton, he didn't. He just had that sort of nuggety determination about him. I mean, he was in Glenn McGrath's pocket most of the time, let's be honest. But seeing him scratch out amazing match-saving innings, not match-winning, match-saving innings such as 185 not out in Johannesburg against the likes of Alan Donald and Sean Pollock, and a couple of memorable hundreds on home soil as well. It was only when I started to realise that I play the game nothing like the guy that I started looking for other players to. He retired in 2001, and that's sort of around the time I started looking at other players such as Kevin Peterson, Michael Vaughan, and these types of people, and we'll get on to some of that a bit later on. Very briefly got to meet Mike Atherton in 2004 at Old Trafford. I went to see England versus the West Indies. I'm just walking around the corner, and he just happened to be standing shoulder to shoulder with me. And 18-year-old me, all I knew how to say was, "Oh, hey." I'm not starstruck, but it was just like, he looks busy. He's on his way to the commentary box. "G'day, Athers. How you going?" He went, "Hello, mate," and then walked off. It was great.
That is great, man. That's a good story.
He's a good commentator too.
Anytime you get to meet your heroes, it's a good idea. Good experience.
100%. And his insight into the game, and he's got a wicked sense of humour as well. There's a time where apparently he, in Australia, got an edge, didn't walk. Ian Healy called him a something cheat, and he just looked up at him and said, "When in Rome, dear boy."
Why don't we follow right up with your number 2 pick there, Charlie? While we got you.
Okay, well, someone who used to also have Michael Atherton in his back pocket, and quite frankly, is a legend of the game. I've got to meet him on 2 separate occasions, the second of which, unbelievable to be bowling in the net right next to him, the one and only Shane Warne. For me, even though he, has been responsible for many English losses, I just love his ability to make batsmen think about what they're doing, get inside their head, set them up for a wicket, which is coming, but you still can't get out the way of it. And people tried to write him off all the way through his career. 2005, they're like, oh, he's past it, he's too old. And he responds with 40 wickets in a 5-match series, which is just an incredible feat. Could turn the ball sideways. That ball to Mike Gatting in the Old Trafford Test of 1993, the ball of the century, it's going to never be forgotten. And some of my favourite things on YouTube are Shane Warne's, greatest or wicket milestone wickets, because the deliveries to get those wickets are fantastic. Pick his brain and think, all right, well, this batsman wants to do this, so I'm just going to put this one in a little bit loopier, try and get him. And only yesterday I was reading how him and Kevin Peterson in the Lord's Test match 2005, Peterson on debut, done a big slog sweep into the crowd for 6, brings up his 50, and Shane Warne's just said, well batted, mate, well batted. Next ball, he's given him exactly the same delivery, maybe a little bit loopier. Peterson's tried the same shot, caught on the boundary, and Shane Warne's just given him a little wink and said, there you go, mate.
That's great, man. That's great. So look, Stuart's number 2 is not one that I'm as familiar with as Hamish's. Let's go to Stu next. So who do you have in your number 2 list here, bud?
So as a young kid growing up, I had to do a lot of bowling in the backyard to the older brother. So I watched this guy quite a lot. He was the leader of the Australian attack. In the 90s, basically, and that, of course, was Billy the Kid, Craig McDermott, the big Queenslander, the big red-headed Queenslander. I had a bit like you, Charlie, delusions of grandeur that I could one day be a fast bowler. I just never grew up.
Oh, caught in the act.
I just never got tall enough. So Craig McDermott was one of my favourite players growing up. Took 291 Test wickets or something for Australia. He debuted when he was really young. He debuted, I think, when he was 18 against the West Indies. That's where he got the nickname of Billy the Kid. But a great fast bowler for Australia. Before there was Glenn McGrath, before there was Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc, there was Craig McDermott. So I used to love watching him run in and take wickets. He used to get the palms out for fun as well. So that was always enjoyable. So I was always Craig McDermott in the backyard trying to get my brother out.
Well, and then it brings us to Hamish's number 2, which is pretty much a household name. Hamish, who you got for number 2?
Well, my number 2, I'm going back into the early days of my life, which is unfortunately showing my age a bit, but my number 2 is Doug Walters, the legendary Doug Walters. Now, he comes in at number 2 for many reasons. His cricket abilities and his stats and his numbers were quite amazing. But when you think about the way he went about his life and his business, it's quite unbelievable. Given that he didn't let a good time get in the way of his cricket career, he lived the way he wanted to. He loved the beer, he loved the smoke, he loved the night out, he loved the game of cards at 3 a.m, the day of a test match. And I just think, given, obviously, there probably wouldn't be a place for a Doug Walters type of character. Shane Warne was close, I guess, but in this day and age of cricket where you have to be so sort of focused and fit and physically fit, but he was the last of that sort of era or type of cricketer who managed to play for an unbelievably long period of time. I think it was 15 years. Did what he wanted to do, played the way he wanted to play, didn't let anyone dictate the way he should go about his own business. And I suppose in the day and age of the game sort of underlining so many people with mental health issues, Doug Walters stands out as being, well, you know what? It is just a game. I'm going to get on with life, number one, and then play the game for the fun of it, number two. And that's what I sort of like about. I don't endorse the way he...
his lifestyle, Hamish, don't endorse his lifestyle.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you know, the Australian... He typified during that period the regular knockabout Australian bloke. He could have easily been the other person on the hill watching the game, but he was one of those blokes playing it very successfully. I did some statistics. I've got them written down here. Having played for Australia for 15 years, he amassed 250, the approximations here, 250,000 cigarettes and maybe 50,000 cans of Tuies, and still managed to play
That's
cricket.
Unreal.
I was using some statistics that I got from Kerry O'Keefe there. Took them down a little bit. And, for that reason, he was the Australian knockabout type of fellow. We all loved him. Harry, my dad, worked with him for quite a number of years and sponsored him. And we just loved him. And, you know, he just was a favourite for Australian people at the time. And anyone of my sort of era or older just loved to meet him and ask him and hear him talk about all his stories. And he's got plenty.
So that makes me wonder then, if Doug Walters, the legend, comes in at your number 2 spot, who then, why don't you start us off on your number 1 cricketers of all time?
Okay, my number 1 is the guy that basically ticks all the boxes, and that's Kumar Sangakkara. I guess during the middle of the start to the middle part, or towards the end of his career, you could consider him one of the great all-rounders, given that he was a very, very capable wicket keeper. He did very well as a top-line batsman, and also captained Sri Lanka at a time where they were capable as a small island nation of knocking over the best cricket teams in the world. Then he gave the gloves away to concentrate on his batting. And allow a younger wicketkeeper to come through, and his batting statistics just speak for themselves at that point of time. I think, for a while there, his batting statistics were only second to Don Bradman. But what a wonderful bloke, a very educated man. Could mix it in the sledging department with the best of them. I don't think that was a big part of his game, but when he needed to give it, he gave it in a very humorous way, or not too nasty. And look, I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times and interviewing him during a session that he did, an in-store appearance that he did with a few other Sri Lankan cricketers at Kingsgrove. And what an insightful person, and no doubt someone that's capable of continuing to achieve a lot of things post-cricket, including maybe leading the nation, but I think he's a bit too smart for politics, to be truthful.
Stu, the number 1 pick you put on your list is one that I heard I saw recommended a few times on Instagram with the favorite cricketers of all time. Why don't you tell us about your number 1 pick? Who's your favorite cricketer of all time, Stu?
My favorite cricketer of all time is from Victoria, which could be a bit of a surprise. He's from Victoria. But he was, again, a dashing batsman when maybe being a dashing batsman wasn't so much in vogue. It is, of course, the great Dean Jones. Again, I wanted to bowl like Craig McDermott, and I wanted to bat like Dean Jones. I achieved none of that. But watching Dino bat was always a highlight. Like I said, very, very attacking. batted at number 3 for Australia. Played some very memorable knocks. Unfortunately, one of his most memorable was very early in his career, and probably not many people would have seen it because there was no real TV coverage of it. Australia were in India in the 80s, and there obviously wasn't the widespread TV coverage that there is now. They're playing in what was then known as Madras. It was stinking hot, and he ended up scoring 210 through all sorts of physical difficulties. He was obviously extremely dehydrated. He was throwing up, doing all sorts of stuff, but he toughed it out. Mainly thanks to Alan Border, who sledged him and said, well, because at one stage Dano wanted to go off. He said, Alan, I can't do this anymore. I'm too tired. And I said, that's okay, mate. It's all right. We'll get a real Australian out here. We'll get a Queenslander because Greg Ritchie, the fat cat, was due in to come next. That obviously rolled Dano up a bit, and he stuck it out. He scored 200 in that's obviously also a very famous Test match because it was part of the second only tied Test match ever in the history of the game, Australia and India. So yeah, 210. Unfortunately, so probably one of the greatest shots of all time, and no one's actually really ever seen it because there's no real footage of it, which is a bit disappointing. But he was a great one-day batsman. Really attacking one-day batsman, scored a really great 100, unfortunately. A bit of an innovator. He was the first player to wear sunglasses on the field. Strangely, no one used to wear sunglasses on the field. And all of a sudden, Dano started to wear them, and then everybody started to wear them. So he's carried that on. He was the first to do that. Great fielder as well. Had a rocket arm. He was great out in the boundary in the one-day games. He used to be able to throw him in from right out deep. Had a rocket arm. Not without controversy, or doing some stupid things. There's obviously that famous time when one day he decided to rile up Curtly Ambrose during a one-day game. Curtly was wearing the great big, tall, fast West Indian. He was wearing white sweatbands on his wrists. Obviously with a white ball. Dano said, no, I can't see it. He said to the umpire, can you ask Curtly to take the sweatbands off? Curtly obliged. He wasn't very happy about it. And then came in and I think he put the next 5 past Dano's nose. And then skittled the rest of the Australians out. So none of his teammates were happy with Dano that day either. He's a bit of a polarising figure. But as a batsman, I wanted to bat like Dano. I think I said in the last podcast, and my first bat was a Dean Jones County legend. So yeah, I thought it was a great batsman. I wanted to bat like Dano, as Hamish would attest. I've never been able to quite achieve that, but he was a great player to watch play.
Yeah, right. Legendary Dean Jones. And then that brings us to Charlie Carter. Why don't you bring us home with your number one pick, your favorite cricketer of all time?
I don't think there are going to be any surprises as to who my pick was. And he would be the first to admit not the greatest cricketer of all time. He was a decent cricketer. He's gone on to be a successful TV host as a wildlife documentary filmmaker. He's now the host of Top Gear. He has had one professional boxing fight and won it, has a 100% record. Better known, of course, for his cricket. He is the one, the only, Andrew Freddie Flintoff. And he's responsible for my unashamed use of woodworm cricket equipment. And he's just basically a hero to me. Had the ability to empty bars at cricket fields whenever he came on to bowl because people had that anticipation, or even when he went out to bat, people had that anticipation that something was going to happen. For me, he was the perfect cricketer for me to model myself on. He liked to get on with it with the bat, and he just ran in and bowled as fast as he could. Now, obviously, I never got up to his pace. I cannot say enough positives about the guy with his cricket, even though he statistically will not go down as one of the greatest cricketers of all time. One of my favourite moments of his was watching live. His was the first hat-trick I ever saw live in a one-day international against the West Indies towards the end of his career. And just things like dealing with the media. Early on in his career, he struggled with his weight as well as injuries. And after probably coming of age in one of his first match-winning performances in a one-day international, having taken some stick in the press in the week leading up to that game, he won the game. And in the press conference afterwards, he was said, "How do you think you went?" And he said, "Oh, I did all right for a fat lad." And sort of after that, the media sort of came a bit more onto his side. He was injured a little bit for the next few years, and it was around about 2002, 2003 that he really started to come to the fore. Had scored 100 in New Zealand in late 2002, I believe. And then the summer of 2003 in England was a bit of a transitional period for English cricket. You had Nasser Hussain, who was the England captain at that time, not going through a great trot. South Africa came over with a young, new, vibrant captain in Graham Smith, who scored a double 100 in the first 2 test matches. Not the first one, the first 2 test matches, bangs out double hundreds. And Freddie Flintoff sort of came to the fore in that series. He started scoring runs. He started taking wickets with the ball and became more of an impact player. That summer of 2004, when I went to my first test match at Old Trafford, which is Freddie Flintoff's home ground, is a Lancashire player, I'll always remember Brian Lara walked out to bat. He needed 7 runs to reach 10,000 runs in test match cricket. Flintoff bowled him round his legs for a duck. His home crowd, they went off their faces. It was fantastic. And I just wish that I'd taken up the option to go to the same venue the following year for the 2005 Ashes for what will go down as one of the most classic draws of all time. 2005 Ashes can only be described as Flintoff's Ashes. Obviously didn't have such a great time in 2006-07 down here. First time I actually got to meet the guy was as he walked off the Sydney Cricket Ground, having just led England to a 5-0 whitewash loss. And I could see the pain etched on his face there, and he's subsequently spoken about that through his programs about mental health. In fact, it was his program for the BBC on mental health is what really inspired me to want to approach you, Nick, to get Gus Warland involved with our mental health episode.
Right.
With Flintoff. I attended his final test match at the Oval in 2009. I wasn't there on the last day, unfortunately, but that Ashes of 2009, when he was battling a knee injury, announced his retirement, bowling on one leg and taking a 5-wicket haul at Lords, England's first victory against Australia at Lords in something like 72 years. The man was just incredible. And like I say, what I like about him most is that he's just a down-to-earth bloke. He's, one of his TV shows is taking a mobile chip van around the country and selling chips out of it. And just his sense of humour as well. And when he finally made a comeback to cricket and played in the Big Bash and singing on the microphone and live commentary. I've met him a couple of times. I met him, like I say, at Sydney Cricket Ground in 2006-07. I met him at Edgbaston briefly in 2009 when I went there for that game. I got a great video of the Barmy Army all in full voice singing Super Freddie Flintoff. Mm-hmm. I'd love to actually just sit down and talk to the guy. He doesn't drink anymore, so I can't have a beer with him, but I'd just love to have a conversation with him. The fact that I got to speak to Shane Warne a few years ago was great, but to sit down with Freddie Flintoff and have a cup of tea or whatever and just chat about normal rubbish would be the pinnacle for me.
That's excellent, man. So we got sweet top 5s, top 5 cricketers of all time from all 3 of these guys. In fact, why don't we, before we wrap up this evening, this is a rare evening podcast we get to do. Why don't we do a quick recap of your list? Stu, you want to list this from 5 to 1? Give us a quick recap, maybe a little statement about each of them. You got that handy?
I'll go if you like. I'm ready.
Yeah, go for it, Charlie. Got you here.
Okay, number 5 for me was Darren Gough, the Yorkshireman, coming in, running and bowling as fast as he could, taking a hat-trick at the SCG. Great stuff. Number 4 was a joint thing for me, Brett Lee and Kevin Peterson. Brett Lee could bowl at the speed of light, and the Barmy Army giving him some stick for no balls at the MCG in 2006 was great fun for me. Kevin Peterson, wow, just what a great batsman on his day. Number 3 for me, Michael Atherton, as long as he keeps his hands out of his pockets and isn't got ball in his hand, that's fine. The first England captain that I actually remember. Number 2 for me, Shane Warne, quite frankly, in my opinion, the greatest bowler of all time. Not the leading wicket taker and may not go down in history as one of the top 3 or 4, but it'll take a long time for anyone to get past his tally. And number 1, Andrew Freddie Flintoff.
Sweet recap. Thanks for that, Charlie. What about you, Stu? Can you give us a quick recap of your top 5, buddy?
So recapping my top 5. So number 5, I had the ever stylish Mark Waugh. Number 4, I had the great Malcolm Marshall. Number 3 was the Master Blaster, Viv Richards. Number 2, the big Queenslander, Billy the Kid, Craig McDermott, and at number 1 was the stylish and slightly polarising Victorian Dean Jones.
Last and of course, definitely not least, Big Hamo, you want to give us a quick recap of your top 5?
Yeah, at number 5, I had Courtney Walsh, world record holding wicket taker, emerging out of the shadows of the West Indian super fast bowling quartet. Then at number 4, I could have been Elise Perry, but I went with Alex Blackwell. Absolutely amazing cricket career, and just having known her and her work ethic, got the go-ahead and the nod there. Given that Stewie nicked Mark Wharf from me, and it was an easy decision to go with Steve Gorgeous, one of those greats of cricket who will be forever remembered for his feats on the field as a captain and as a player. Dougie Walters for all the wrong reasons, I guess you could almost say. But what a guy. And at number 1, the guy that really
all the right ones.
Boxes, the guy that ticks all the boxes for me as a cricketer, as a person that could succeed off the field post-cricket, Kumar Sangakkara.
Oh, man. Excellent list from everybody. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to get those together for us. I'm going to try and see if I can put us all on the screen here as we sign off for our podcast. Thanks for joining us for this 39th episode. What you got?
Just think about that, though. We got a couple of hours there to give Nick our top 5s. Think of all the names that we've missed out. I'm just thinking of the current players. You got Steve Smith, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Joe Root, Ben Stokes. How do you narrow it down?
I would say probably as equal amount of people that I got sending through their favorite cricketers of all time on our Instagram story yesterday. I had quite a number of them sent through messages like, "Oh, I can't believe that nobody mentioned Adam Gilchrist. Isn't it Adam Gilchrist is his name? Like nobody mentioned Adam Gilchrist, and no one mentioned Alan Border. Like how is that possible?" And so, if you've made it to the end of the podcast, thanks for joining us. Thanks for following us on this experiment, doing Zoom calls from the comfort of our own homes and stuff. This is all on our uncharted territory for us as well. But if we've missed somebody that you would have as your top cricketer, your favorite cricketer of all time, let us know. Give us your top 5 lists. If you're listening to us, reach out to us on social media. We're at Facebook at Kingsgrove Sports Centre, Instagram at Kingsgrove Sports, Twitter at Kingsgrove Sport. Give us your list with the hashtag KSC podcast so you get our attention. Give us your top 5 favorite cricketers of all time. Tell these guys where you agree with them. Tell these guys where they went wrong, where somebody they'd overrated or underrated, and give us your lists. We'd love to hear from you. But of course, thank you to our normal podcast team here. I appreciate all of you guys. I'll thank you here on the podcast for being flexible and giving something new a try, doing a Zoom call to do a podcast. I hope it's been enjoyable to listen to. Let us know what you think. And thanks for being with us, everybody.
Hey, Nick, I've got a big question for you.
Go ahead. Before we sign off,
is the Kingsgrove store still open?
So our website is absolutely still open. If anything you want to get at kingsgrovesports.com.au, we are still placing and we're still accepting and filling orders. Stu especially is hard at work fulfilling all your orders. Anything you decide to buy on kingsgrovesports.com.au, Stu and a couple other members of our dedicated staff.
I'll pick it and send it.
He's picking it himself. If you message through, if you message through on social media, you're talking to me. I'm coordinating with these guys to get as many product photos as I can to help you. We definitely very much care about you getting everything that you need, especially to be able to train in isolation. So when next season comes around or when sports start back up again, you're ready to go. You don't miss a beat. So make sure you're shopping online at Kingsgrove. If you need anything, we're here for you. Anything else to say before we sign off, fellas?
Yeah, I just want to give, as tradition, doing it at the end of the show this time, a big shout out to Jack and Lynn Unitzis, and of course Alex, who I got to meet for the first time.
You got to meet my brother. We tested a Zoom call earlier, and we got to meet my brother momentarily. So,
Alex and his lovely wife.
Yeah, once again, thank you everybody for joining us for this podcast, and we'll see you next time on our 40th episode. Take care, everybody. Be safe.